friend. His wife, Rachel, is a student of my wife from high school. My wife was her teacher in high school. So we have relationships with Goldbergs for a long while. It was the perfect one to replace us. They were the perfect ones to replace us in Memphis. They did a great job, an amazing job, and he did an amazing job here in Israel. Rabbi Avi Goldberg, Hashem Kom Damo. It's only a week and a half ago that he was killed in Lebanon, Moser Nefesh in Lebanon. And this limud, as you'll see, is also related to him, the way I remember him. It was Rabbi Joel Finkelstein, a community rabbi in Memphis, when I can't forget that when we interviewed Rabbi Goldberg on Skype. Zoom then was not that known. At 2008, we remember the house. We went to the house of one of the Balabatim, and a group of rabbis and leaders and myself interviewed the couple, and another couple, and Rabbi Joel said, this $1 million smile is something that, and the smile wasn't an external thing. He told all my friends, you seen the picture in the website that he smiles? But that's the way he was. It's not that he smiled from the camera. That's the way he was. They said, and then they quoted me in Memphis that night, that Ohev ve'ahuv. They identified him. Ohev ve'ahuv. Reminds me of the image of Rabbi Akiva. That's what I told Rachel. By the way, his wife is called Rachel. But to explain that more, we'll see the shir. So I decided to give a shir. As you see, there are two English words here, Emunah and Bitachon, which are the Hebrew words. Emunah and Bitachon are the Hebrew translations to the English words Emunah and Bitachon. So Emunah and Bitachon at times of war. That's the topic of the shir. We'll see that it even has a link to our parsha. I'll just say our parsha. First of all, Avraham, as you know, runs there a war against the four kings, rescuing people that are hostages, are captives. Lot. Yeah, it says that Avraham heard that his brother is in captivity. And so first of all, yeah, definitely when he went to that war, he had to have some emunah and some confidence, some emunah in Hashem. Later, there is a pasuk there that when Abraham, has no children, has nothing, God promises him something that seems very unreal, on realistic grounds, that your offsprings will be as many as the sand of as the stars, and it says, the verse is, you'll see it later quoted here in the source sheet. Lachesh or okay. Ve'emin b'Hashem v'yichshaveh lo tzedakah. And he believed God, and it was considered to him. Okay, here there is the way you translate it is depending on interpretation, as usual. But it says that he believed God. After God promised him, he believed him. Okay, so Emunah and Bitachon at times of war. And when I say at times of war, it's including, of course, times where, there's sometimes that we saw it during this war. There's some periods that the sun shines, and sometimes there are clouds all around. I'll give you my prayer that's very personal, but in a very, very, gross, I don't know how you call it, robust, not accurate, that's what I mean here, analogy. So the way the war started in the south, unfortunately reminds us of the Yom Kippur War in many ways. Surprise, something terrible, etc. But the way we took initiative in the north several months ago reminded more structurally the 6-Day War. Taking initiative, finishing, the Beeper attack, and then the finishing all the leadership of Hezbollah and creating a pretty much chaos in Hezbollah. So you could see I just gave it as an example, so that there are clouds and and sometimes the sun is relatively shining. If we'll ignore, and we can't ignore what happened in Simchas Torah, but if in Rosh Hashanah, not that one, the previous one, people will tell you, at the end of the year, the vast majority of Hamas's ability, Israel will be in Gaza. The army will pretty much control Gaza. The vast majority of the army force of Hamas will be destroyed. We will destroy the things that are in the border of Lebanon, threatening our Yishuvim and all this. I think Iran will be attacked in a significant way. I think that people will say, hey, that's amazing, you're dreaming. So you really, it's a question of perspective, and we can't ignore either one of that perspective. That's very, very important. I don't think it's appropriate to say everything is great and good when it's not. When we have hostages, when we have so many families suffering, when we have Rabbi Goldberg leaving 8 orphans, etc. But we can't. On the other hand, ignore the chasadim that God does with us in this whole campaign. So I want to speak specifically about Emunah and Bitachon, and I'll say already from the beginning that I'll use several Jewish thinkers, okay? But the vast majority of what I'm going to present now is based on a talk that Rabbi Aaron Lichtenstein, my Rebbe, Rosh Yeshiva of the Gush, Zecher Tzadik Levracha, he gave an address, a speech to educators after the Yom Kippur War. So we're talking about a talk that was given something like more than 50 years ago.
73.
No, so that's 50 years ago. I think that's the math. Okay, so hopefully that's the arithmetics, not even the math. My father is a math professor, so we make a distinction between arithmetics and math. Yeah, he's not busy with arithmetics. For that, you have a calculator. He's busy with math. It's a different thing. Not that I understand that well, but I believe him that he does exciting things. Yeah. Just to quote the name of his PhD is a challenge, okay, in terms of the terminology. At any rate, so around 50 years ago, or even a little more or less, but Rabbi Lichtenstein gave a whole, and then it was printed out, was translated to English. It was given originally in Hebrew, but here I was able to put a hand on the English translation, edited, by our good friend Rabbi Ziegler, Ronnie. Based on it, and I'll base myself a lot on this, but I will extend it to some other things too. I won't stay only with Rabbi Lichtenstein. So he spoke with educators, and I think that the historical background is important because you'll see the differences and the similarities to our situation. I think that, the religious Zionist, I assume he spoke to religious Zionist educators. That's what it seems from the context of the talk, after the Yom Kippur War. Now, we need to understand, and here I'm going to say things that are very known, excuse me for being maybe a little banal, but it's still important to repeat it. After the Yom Kippur War, after the 6-Day War, there was a big uprising in the Jewish confidence and the Jewish identity. It had tremendous effects, okay? Just think about Soviet Jewry. I'm just giving Soviet Jewry, the whole awakening of Soviet Jewry was based on, of the outcomes of the 6-Day War. There was pride that caused them to do tshuva. That's my example. When I had a little argument with my father held as a young adult that there is this famous discussion that is already going back to the Tanaim and the Amoraim, to our sages.
what is the sequence of in between? What's the relationship between tshuva and geula? The logic says, after we do tshuva, in return, God will redeem us. That's definitely written in Parshat Nitzavim. That's definitely a very, very rational model. But, God works in all kinds of ways. We can't dictate to God how to work. Sometimes He does a certain measurement of geula in order to enhance and promote tshuva. And I think that's what happened with Soviet Jewry. That's the best historical, relatively recent example for such a thing, how geula davka proceeded and led to tshuva. So, I mean, the 6 Day War had a lot of effects, and on Israeli society in general. I said on Soviet Jewry, definitely on the religious Zionist camp. Yeah, the religious Zionist camp, again, it's a very, very big generalization. As we know, the religious Zionist camp is very complex and very broad, but I'll make a very, very big generalization. There was a whole group, we'll say, if we want to be careful, of the religious Zionism that developed because, as an outcome of the 6 Day War, a shift from being what was called the mashgichei kashrut of the Jewish state. Yeah, it was like a derogatory term. We're the kashrut mashgiach of the Jewish state till then, and now, no, we're pioneers. We're settling. We're we smell the geula coming. Yeah, Jerusalem was released. We see, okay, soon Mashiach will come. Yeah, I'll say that, and we have to take action in order even to expedite the process. And then there is the Yom Kippur War. The Yom Kippur War was a certain shock and a blow to Israeli society in general, not only the religious Zionist camp. It had a lot of effects. Many scholars claim that the movement of Chazara B'Tshuvah, more in the Haredi, more secular, is becoming Haredi. Rav Uri Zohar, all kinds of very famous, that many claim that the Yom Kippur War had an effect, like the secular Zionism got a what? A kick, yeah, a blow, which shake the whole paradigm, and now they're looking for God, or something like that. Our kochi ve'otzem yadi, in my might and my what got a very big blow. And naturally, Rav Lichtenstein here, and remember, he's a pretty recent Oleh. Yeah, he made Aliyah a little bit before the Yom Kippur War. I went several years, not a lot, but he experienced big time the Yom Kippur War here already as an Israeli, as a recent Oleh, because many of his students were killed in the war. It was definitely a shocking experience. And he's now speaking to religious Zionist educators that were in a mindset before the Yom Kippur War of the 6 Day War. Of here, we're religious Zionist educators. We believe in the very soon Geula, Messiah, activism, etc. God is with us. The historical process after 2,000 years of exile is in motion. And here there is something that doesn't work exactly according to the paradigm that we were pretty certain that is going. That it's like a one-way ticket and here we see a setback, whatever. So this is the historical context of Rav Lichtenstein giving this talk. So first, he starts his presentation in a question about, a general question about the balance between man's and women, of course, activism versus being passive and just trusting God that He will do to me the job. That's a very where is the balance between the two? He gives the example of approach going to a doctor. Okay, he quotes the very, very rare and extreme Ramban that says one who really trusts in God has no business with doctors. There is a certain quote. By the way, Ramban contradicts himself in another place. That's a very unique and usually the mainstream of Judaism, we don't see such statements, but yeah, we can't deny that there is a statement like that in Ramban. Of course, he speaks about a very, very high level of Emunah, someone that lives in a certain sphere that, he's only with God. Ramban himself was a doctor, by the way, so that's one extremity, and the other is the general mainstream Jewish approach that one believes in God, but yet does his hishtadlut, as we tell you. I remember a conversation in Miluim that I had. That's probably almost 30 years ago, or maybe 25. Yeah, almost 30 years ago, 28 years ago, whatever. A conversation that I had in Miluim with a secular friend, and he asked me, "What do you mean? If you're here in the army?" It was very superficial, so shallow, I'll say. So you don't believe in God. You use a tank, so you don't believe in God. You believe in the tank. You believe in you being a paratrooper in infantry. And I told him, look, my dear friend, it's much more complex. Yeah, it reminded me, unfortunately, and here I have to quote this, even though Professor Leibowitz, Yeshayahu, in the book that he's interviewed by Michael Sheshar, says, I'll prove to you that he wants to prove his point. He has an approach that davening is only a mitzvah that you do, a technical mitzvah. You're a slave of God, and you're doing mitzvot. That's the highest level in Leibowitz in terms of lishma. You're doing things not for your benefit, of course, but for God's avoda. But the text of the tefillah, as we know, includes things like refa'enu, things that I asked for. So he said, no, that's only for the stupid people. It's just that the sages made a text that everyone can connect to. But tachlis, that's not the point. It could have been a telephone number. If the sages would have said that davening is to recite a telephone number 3 times a day, that will be the same. Okay? And then he says, I'll prove to you, he says Michael Sheshar, that one who davens in the morning, Rafa'inu, doesn't believe in it. Because he says that, and then 5 minutes later he goes to the doctor. So I said, wow, this is the level of a professor? I mean, this is so shallow. Yeah, everyone understands that I daven, that God will give the wisdom to the doctor to do the right thing. What's so complex about this? I mean, the fact that I'm going to the doctor proves that when I said Rafa'inu, I wasn't meaning it seriously. I'm even embarrassed that I have to explain that. But since a very respected professor, philosopher, said that statement, so I need to explain this simple thing. I would say that Rav Lichtenstein himself, in a book at the end of his life, there is a book that was translated to English, by the way, an interview that Rav Chaim Sabato, the Rosh Yeshiva of Ma'ale Adumim, is interviewing him regarding all kinds of matters. So they have I think, a very nice chapter about tefillah. And Rav Lichtenstein tells them that because technology developed, actually that caused our tefillah to be that we feel less. The medical and technological advancement causes us to feel less the existential dependency on God. That's a fact. 300 years ago, when one was davening Refa'enu, he knew that there's 50% that his kids will not pass the age of 5 years ago. So just imagine how a normal person would daven Refa'enu. But now we live in a different world. And it's a blessing, of course, but it did cause the existential the existential experience of dependency on God to be different. And Rav Lichtenstein was a very honest person, and he brought it up front. And then Rav Chaim Sabato tells him, so maybe that's an opportunity that our tefillah will dafka be elevated. It won't be only asking for things, but praising God. So Rav Lichtenstein tells him, I'll tell you the truth. I'm translating. I remember the Hebrew. I'm now translating myself. I'll tell you the truth. I'm a simple Jew. A Jew, when he's in trouble, he says Tehillim. I think it's a very, very deep. That taste, that of existential dependency, and you in the tzara crying for God, is something that is very powerful, and that's what Rav Lichtenstein kind of mourns for partially losing because of as a generalization, of course, in our modern era. At any rate, back to our point. So here is a question about balancing between, as I said, how much are we active and how much we depend on God and say, yeah, we have bitachon on God and He's going to help us. And as I said, the mainstream approach in Judaism is the one that I daven rafa'enu, and I believe that everything is in the hands of God, and He gives the wisdom for technology, for medicine, for military success, for everything. And yet still, I'll do what I have to do. As Rachel Goldberg said in the Shiva to Rabbi Amar, when we clean the table for Shabbos on Friday, and all the kids are participating, we won't accept that one kid will say, no, I'm not helping to clean the house. I'm davening that the house will be clean. I'm learning Torah so that the house will be clean. It just doesn't work. At any rate, so if we're speaking about the balance between hishtadlus and bitachon, so let's read the first quote here that I brought. Our approach of humanity's role in shaping history thus combines two factors: bold and responsible action, accompanied by a deep and daring bitachon. What, however, is the nature of this bitachon? He raises up the question in the beginning of his speech. It seems to me that we must distinguish between two fundamental approaches. According to the first approach, trust is expressed by the certainty that God stands. Oh, I see that I forgot to do I wanted to do it last night, but I forgot a search in the Word document and changing all the places where God, G-O-D, appears to G, comma D. So I didn't do that, so we'll have to bring these sheets to Giza. Okay? Please. According to the first approach, trust is expressed by the certainty that God stands at your side and will assist you. Okay. The first concept of bitachon, and then I'll give examples that go beyond Rav Lichtenstein's presentation, as I promised you. The first, he wants to distinguish between two meanings of bitachon. He's basing himself on one of the medieval thinkers, Rabbeinu Bechai, as we'll see. One concept of bitachon is a very popular one. I'm trusting God that the sheyetov. You know the term yetov? Yoter tov. You know, God is with us. I have trust that God is with us. Okay? We'll say it this way. I want to crystallize this. It's not just, I know that God controls the world, but it's more, I trust God that He is doing things for the good. Okay? We'll say, and therefore, and for the good of us, as His people, as His nation, as His worshiper. God is with His Hasidim. Okay? And that's my bitachon. I have bitachon that at the end of the day, sometimes I don't understand, sometimes there are clouds in the horizon, but I believe that God is with us. Yeah.
In 1967, that was not too long after World War II.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the Holocaust.
Mm-hmm.
Now, by any rational thinking, like where, I was born after that, obviously, but that was if we had lost the 6-Day War, okay,
Mm-hmm.
that would have been the end of being able to believe in
So we'll see that. Okay? So we'll see that. I think that there are many Anshe Emunah that even if we Chas v'Shalom would have lost the 6-Day War, they would have maintained their... But I understand your statement. I understand your statement. Let's see now the first, what is the Chazon Ish is saying. There is, as you know, the Chazon Ish. I don't need to explain who is the Chazon Ish, the great Haredi leader living in Bnei Brak. Big, was considered Gdol Hador by groups. So the Chazon Ish wrote a book called Emunah Bitachon. Believe, trust, and Bitachon. Emunah and Bitachon. So he writes the following, and it's a very, very famous quote of the Chazon Ish. An old error has become rooted in the hearts of many concerning the concept of trust. By the way, when it's written here, trust means bitachon. Okay? Alright. Trust has come to mean that a person is obligated to believe that whatever he is presented with, whenever he's presented with two possibilities, outcomes, one good and one not, then certainly it will turn out for the good. And if he has doubts and fears the worst, that constitutes a lack of trust. Where is your emunah? Where is your bitachon? You're so pessimistic. Where is your emunah? Where is your bitachon? So he says a very, very popular, and the Chazon Ish speaks about religious people, about his crowd, even. People are, it's rooted in some Jewish DNA, a more popular one, a more amami, how will you say amami? Popular, common. I think there's not a good, perhaps there's not a great translation to this amami. Very, simple, spread out, notion, popular concept of bitachon. You should have bitachon that the outcome will be good. God is a good God, and you should have a bitachon that will be good. And then he goes on. This view of bitachon is incorrect. He's very, very sharp. For as long as the future outcome has not been clarified through prophecy, that outcome has not been decided. For who can truly know God's judgment and providence? Rather, now he redefines what is in his eyes is the right notion, right concept of bitachon. Rather, trust means realizing that there are no coincidences in the world, and that whatever happens under the sun is a function of God's decree. Meaning, he requires the Jew to have bitachon in the meaning that, look, I have no clue what will happen. Maybe the Arabs maybe Iran will conquer Israel. Chas v'shalom. I really don't know, and I can't know, and I can't be sure that whether we will stay here or Iran will take over. No, I don't know. I strongly believe, says the Chazon Ish, that everything is in his control. But nothing about good or bad. My bitachon is that everything is there's no coincidence. Okay? That's the bitachon. I'm sure that there is no coincidence. Now, of course, I'll just challenge a little bit the Chazon Ish. Okay? What causes the popular notion of bitachon? A combination of two things, two assumptions. A, what the Chazon Ish assumes. I think every Jew is nothing is coincidence. It's all there's no coincidence. B, since we're told that God is rachum b'chanun, and we believe that God is a God of chesed, a God of good. So since everything is in his ashgacha, and since he is a kel rachum b'chanun, then I have a bitachon that things will go for the good. What he refuses to say. But I'm just showing how the popular belief developed, because it added the second assumption that the Chazon Ish refuses now to adopt. But as Rav Lichtenstein says, he says Chazon Ish is way he criticizes him a little bit here. Rav Lichtenstein says he's way too extreme when he says it's an error, because we have even medieval thinkers that hold to this error, that we have bitachon in God, that things will go for the good. Just hold on 1 second, we'll read, and then there'll be a clarification. We'll finish this page, and then definitely. Rabbeinu Bechai ben Asher, who is a student of the Rashba, that's a medieval rabbi, okay? In his book Kada Kemach says, the matter of trust in God was explained by the saintly Rabbeinu Yonah, that's another Rishon, it's Shari Tshuva, Gerenodi, to mean that a person ought to accept wholeheartedly that everything is within the power of heaven. Meaning not only, as the Chazon Ish says, providence, meaning there is no coincidence, but God, everything is in His hands. God can transcend the laws of nature and change a person's fortune. And though a situation may appear to be hopeless, divine intervention can change the reality in an instant. God's salvation is close at hand, for He is omnipotent. Even if a sword rests on a person's neck, that's a quote, the Rabbeinu Bechai quotes from the sages. The sages present in the Gemara and Brachot a dialogue between King Chizkiah and the prophet Isaiah. And when the prophet Isaiah tells Chizkiah, "You're done. You have a decree that you're going to die now from your illness that you're currently experiencing," he says, "You should get out." Chizkiah, the king, tells Isaiah, "Get out of here. I was taught by my great-grandpa, David HaMelech, that even if a sword rests on a person's neck, he should not imagine that salvation is impossible." And then he turns to the wall, he cries to God, and then Isaiah comes to him, "God heard your crying, you have 13 more years to live." Okay? So this is the first notion of Bitachon that Rabbeinu Bechai presents, is that a person, not only as the Chazon Ish says, has the Bitachon that there's no coincidence, but it's more than that. Since God is omnipotent, therefore I never give up. I hope for the good, and I have trust that things could be for the good. So that's that's a very different music than the Chazon Ish, okay? It seems to be even somewhat what the Chazon Ish attacks, and here you have a medieval thinker that presents it, and another Rabbeinu Bechai, don't be confused, two medieval thinkers called Rabbeinu Bechai. So the more popular one, Rabbeinu Bechai Ibn Pakuda, in Chovat HaLevavot, in his Duties of the Heart, says the following. The peace of mind, in chapter 1, the peace of mind of the one who trusts that the one upon whom he relies, he explains what is Bitachon. Shar HaBitachon. So he says, what is Bitachon? What is trust? The peace of mind of the one who trusts that the one upon whom he relies, whether God or man, by the way, he says Bitachon, he says, there is a term called Bitachon. I have Bitachon in God, and I sometimes have Bitachon of a good friend or of a parent. And he speaks about both of them in one definition. So the peace of mind of the one who trusts that the one upon whom he relies, whether God or man, will do the best and the most appropriate for him in the matter. You see how different it is from the Chazon Ish? The Chazon Ish says that's a rooted error. And here he says, the peace of mind of the one who trusts, the one who he relies on, that he will do the best and the most appropriate for him in the matter. The main definition of trust is that one's heart should believe that the one, flip the page, relied upon will fulfill what he has promised and do good on his behalf, not out of obligation, but out of kindness and mercy. So Rav Lichtenstein brings these quotes of both of the Rabbeinu Bechais, and he says towards the Chazon Ish, excuse me, you can't say that this is a rooted error of just a simplistic, popular notion of simple Jewish people, that their bitachon is, I trust God that it will be for the good. Here you see that the Rabbeinu Bechai also say that bitachon is, I trust God that will be for the good. Of course, they were also complex. They understood that sometimes things don't work, that we don't understand, that it even seems to us the opposite. But we still have a strong Emunah and Bitachon in God that He's doing for the good. I'm not sure the Chazon Ish totally disagrees with it, okay? I think the Chazon Ish just made a strong statement because he saw that some people are crossing the line too much, meaning that, I'm certain that God will be for the good, even in a micro thing. And then, of course, there is a blow when God doesn't work exactly according to their program plan. And I think that's what the Chazon Ish was mostly concerned about. But Rav Levin points out that, he went too far, the Chazon Ish, in that sense. He said, you know what, and he believed in it's wrong. Bitachon, I have no clue what's going to happen. Fundamentally, I just trust that God is Mashgiach. He said, no, it's more than just you trust that God is Mashgiach. You trust that God is Mashgiach and He is doing things for the good of the Jewish people. Okay? Yes, please.
What is the story of when God we believe on the God Avil? What is the story? Where it comes from?
What? In God we trust?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I'm weak I did study in 10th grade in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I had a great teacher there for American history. Actually, I was a bucky in all 40 presidents, and what they did was an amazing time. Unfortunately, I forgot some of the things, but it was great. It was a great book. I'm sorry, I have no clue what's the history of God, on God's We Trust, but maybe some people know here. And Wikipedia, I think of course, but I think that Wikipedia might provide here an answer easily. At any rate, so let's go now. Okay, so that's Chevre. We did, we did only Chatzi Shir. I'll explain you why we did only Chatzi Shir. Because I think the bigger innovation of Lichtenstein. Okay, so one thing is his discussion here with the Chazon Ish, defending the more popular notion of Bitachon. But the main thing is Dafka what we reach now, which is the second definition for Bitachon given by this Rabbeinu Bechai, the first Rabbeinu Bechai, the Talmud of the Rashba, the Kad HaKemach. So let's read that. That's in this page, so you flip it. We already flipped it. And the third line, you see Kad HaKemach. Also included in the matter of trust is that a person must surrender his soul to God. We call it Mesiras Nefesh. Rabbi Goldberg, Rabbi Akiva. And should constantly occupy his thoughts with this matter. If what is brigands? What is that? What is brigands? So that's an SAT word. Yeah. Okay. Great. An Obama word. Okay. If brigands should come, not a Trump word. Yeah. If brigands should come to kill him, or to force him to abrogate the Torah. That's another nice word. He should. For every word that I don't know, I assume it's a nice word. Okay. So if brigands should come to kill him or to force him to abrogate the Torah, he should prefer to give up his life rather than go against the Torah. Concerning this, David said, "To you, God, I shall offer my soul." And it further states, "My God, in you I have trusted. Let me not be disgraced." One who gives up his life under such circumstances has performed an act of bitachon. Now that's very, very interesting. Maybe we would call this ahavat Hashem. Like when I said that I relate my dear friend Avi Goldberg, Hashem Yikom Damo, Rabbi Avi Goldberg, Hashem Yikom Damo, to Rabbi Akiva, this thought came to me in the Levaya. And I told that Rachel when I came to the Shiva call. It struck me in the Levaya. Then I saw that other people also thought about it. But in the Levaya I thought, this is a great lover. And I was reminded by Rav Kook's famous introduction to Shir HaShirim. It appears in his book, in his interpretation for the Siddur, Olat Re'iyah. Rav Kook was gathered from his writings, an interpretation on the tefillah called Olat Re'iyah. And there is an intro there to Shir HaShirim, which is a great introduction. And he speaks there about Rabbi Akiva. As you know, Rabbi Akiva, he held the opinion that all the Tanakh books are Kodesh, are holy, but the book of Shir HaShirim is the holy of holies, Shir HaShirim. Rabbi Akiva says, and Rav Kook explains that Rabbi Akiva is the great lover. Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, ze klal gadol b'Torah. Yeah, who coined that? Rabbi Akiva said that ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. His love to his wife, Rachel. And Shir HaShirim, love to God. Shir HaShirim is Kodesh Kodashim. And unfortunately, at the end of his life, when he was executed by the Romans, so his students told him, Rabbi Akiva, what's going on here? You're such a tzaddik. What's going on? And then he said, you don't get it. All my life I was yearning, when will I fulfill the commandment that Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafsha? You should love God with all your soul, even, and he interpreted, even if he takes your soul. Now I am fulfilling that. And I said, Rabbi Avi, all of these things were regarding him. He loved his family, he loved his students, he was a lover of people, he loved the Torah, he loved God, and unfortunately also he finished his life like Rabbi Akiva. And his wife is called Rachel. Yeah. But afilu notelet nafshecha. So I'm returning again to our. I came out of it because this Kada Kemach, he surprises us. He has a paragraph about Bitachon, and he says, okay, the first meaning of Bitachon is what we said previously. We trust God that He's doing things for the good. Okay, that's the first, and He has the power to do it for the good. And he says, but I'll give you another interpretation, another thing that has to do with Bitachon, included in Bitachon. Bitachon in God means that I love Him so much that I'm even willing to sacrifice my life for Him. But why is that Bitachon? I mean, that's love. I understand. That's Mesiras Nefesh. How is that confidence? Why does he link it here? He says it explicitly. Yeah, he says it explicitly. My God, in you I have trusted. To you, God, I shall offer up my soul. One who gives up his life under such has performed an act of bitachon. So I guess it's bitachon that I'm doing the bitachon. I have a strong confidence that that's what I should. That's the truth. I trust God as the God of truth. So I'm going with that. Even if all rational considerations are against it. When I say rational, meaning self-survival, okay? No, I am sure. This sureness about the right way, about clinging to the source of the truth. That's the bitachon. That's my first interpretation. We'll see more, okay? Rabbi Lichtenstein says, obviously, okay, now Rabbi Lichtenstein comments, after presenting the two concepts of bitachon, bitachon that God is doing things for the good, and bitachon in Him, in His truth, yeah, bitachon in Him, or He is my source. Now I'm elaborating. He is my source of confidence. The fact that I'm with Him, that's my anchor, even if I die. But that's my deepest anchor, my clinging to Him. Okay, so that's the bitachon. So Rabbi Lichtenstein says, obviously, this approach has a completely different meaning, than the first one. It does not attempt to scatter the clouds of misfortune, try to raise expectations, or strive to whitewash a dark future. It does not claim that it will all work out for the best, yetov, either individually or nationally, as opposed to the first approach that believes that yetov, okay? But this one, no. In that sense, closer to the Chazon Ish, in that sense. But again, that's not what the Chazon Ish said. The Chazon Ish said a third. He said, I trust that God runs the world. That's all. Period. Not good, not bad. I trust that there's no coincidence. But that's not what we're saying here in the second concept of bitachon. But he said, what I said, the similarity to the Chazon Ish, it does not claim that it will all work out for the best. either individually or nationally. On the contrary, it expresses a steadfast commitment, even if the outcome will be bad. Yeah, the person that has this midah of bitachon declares, even if things will not work according to the plan, even if the outcome will be bad, we will remain reliant on, is that right, reliant? Okay, great. And on and connected to God. We will remain faithful until the end and shall not exchange our trust in God for dependence on man. This approach does not claim that God will remain at our side. Rather, it asks us to remain at his side. I think that's exactly here the point. Naturally, says Rav Lichtenstein, and remember, this is a talk he gives to educators, religious Zionist educators, after the blow, the kick of the Yom Kippur War. Naturally, this approach is much less popular than its counterpart. The first, a demand is always less marketable than a promise. For one who makes an honest assessment, though, this approach also functions as a source of solace. Solace? Solace, what is solace? Yeah, of solace and strength. Look, you have to understand, I read this in Hebrew, of course, yeah, so I'm picking the words here. In truth, this approach presents not just a demand, but also a message. He says it's not, he now says, yeah, at the beginning I made a distinction about a promise versus a demand. Right? The first concept of bitachon is a promise. The second is more a demand. Even if God is taking your life, you still cling to him, and that's the source of your bitachon, of your strength. And you have the bitachon in the truth. Okay, no matter what clouds are there. Okay, but he says, but that's also strengthens you in exchange. That's what it's not merely a demand. That's what. Well, even the second approach, this is when you delve into it, it's not merely a demand, it's also a source of strength, obviously. When Rabbi Goldberg was willing to be Moser his Nefesh, he did it out of strength. Extreme strength. What?
And Yossi Peshkovich was singing.
Was singing there. Yeah, but here, the Lo Yira Raki Ata Imadi, Yossi's great song, that I taught my community on Simchas Torah. Here you can argue, if you will analyze that chapter, whether it's the first meaning of the bitachon or the second meaning of bitachon. Okay, and it could be both, of course. By the way, Rav Lichtenstein, and because I don't have a room, he analyzes in his talk to the educators Tehillim. And he shows chapters from Tehillim that goes with first understanding and chapters that are going with the second understanding. But let's go. Both of them are in Tehillim, okay? But let's now continue. It's also a source, functions as a source of solace and strength. In truth, by the way, in the paragraph that is one before the last one in the third row. In truth, this approach presents not just a demand but also a message. Being disconnected from God constitutes the greatest tragedy that can befall a person. When the Torah states, "To him you shall cleave," it is to me expresses a demand as well as an opportunity. Similarly, the psalmist called Israel, "Trust in God," Israel betach b'Hashem, constitutes both a demand as well as an opportunity. Meaning, if my source of strength and bitachon is God, it's the spiritual God, no matter what happens here in the physical world. Okay? That's a source of strength. I'm clinging to the truth. I'm clinging to God. Okay? I'm not alone. I'm with him, which is the source of all the bitachon and truth and companionship, or whatever you want to say. I'll just say here before we can, let's continue. When the Torah tells us that Avraham had faith in God, our parsha that I started with, Ve'emin b'Hashem, he believed in God, or he had trust in God when God promised him offsprings, plenty and plenty of offspring. When the Torah tells us that Avraham had faith in God, okay, this indicates not only his intellectual belief, but also his general state of mind. He feels absolutely dependent upon and connected to God. Following God's wondrous promise, lift up your eyes to the heavens, our Parsha, and count the stars if you can, for your descendants will be as numerous. Avraham pins all his hopes upon God and is completely convinced, experientially and existentially, not only intellectually, that those promises will be fulfilled. So that seems to be the first understanding of Bitachon, right? At this time he perceives God to be a shield to all who trust in him. And he relies on God to fulfill this great and awesome vision. That's the first aspect of the trust, is obligated by the mitzvah of belief. Yeah, here, Rav Lichtenstein turns to make a distinction between two commandments and relates them to the two meanings of bitachon. One is the belief in God, faith, belief in God, and one is the love of God. Okay? The first one, he relates to the first concept of bitachon. Avraham believes not only intellectually, but existentially and experientially, that God will do things for the good. That God, if God told me that I'll have offsprings like the stars, even though now there are clouds, I'm 90 years old and I have 0 children, I believe in God. That will be for the good. That is, will keep his promises. The second notion, Rav Lichtenstein more connects it to the love of God. Unconditional love. I love him even if everything is screwed up. I'm still clinging to him. And that's a very, very big, even Mesiras Nefesh. Even Mesiras Nefesh.
I think that has to do with the concept that Nisto Delke Hashem.
Nachon.
I mean, if we understand that we don't understand Hashem's ways, then by definition, you're not really in a place that you can say whether it's good or bad in the way you conceive it.
It's true, but yet still here we have why things are a little more complex. You're definitely right. Everything he said is right. But we can't ignore the first concept of bitachon, which is based on what we see in our own eyes. I mean, we know we have this asterisk, Istawot Delke Hashem, okay? But we still say Hashem, Hashem kel rachum v'chanun, meaning the direction should be to the good. And it's not that we have 0 clue of what is good, yeah? We know that kissing a baby is good and murdering a baby is bad. We know that. We won't say Nistawot Delke Hashem. Okay, so the things are a little more complex. Yeah, we need to hold several balls together and acknowledge the fact that, yes, since our knowledge is limited, so we don't always understand how the things work out exactly. And God's end cheshbonos, and some things that appear to us bad are not necessarily in the long run bad. Of course, that is all true. Yet still, we have a trust. Let's stick again with the example that the Rabbi Lichtenstein gave from our Parsha. God promises Abraham that he will have offspring like the stars. He believes him. Okay? Even though you don't see it now, he believes him. Okay? He's not just saying, okay, I'm sticking with God no matter what. That's true too, but that's the second notion of bitachon. Okay? I'm sticking with him whatever happens. The proclamation, though he may slay me. Now he goes to the second. Now Rav Lichtenstein goes to the second approach in bitachon. The proclamation, though he may slay me, still I will trust in him. That's a quote from Yov. Okay? Even if he slays me, I am still longing to him. Expresses a trust in God himself, not as a function of what I can receive from him, but rather as trust in him. Bitachon in him, not in what he does. That's the second approach to bitachon. This trust is unconnected with what one may get out of the relationship, but simply describes a connection to God. The desire to come close to Him, to serve Him, to rely upon Him, to take hold of the foundation of all else and the source of existence is predicated, according to this Mishnah, on love. Mishnah and Sota. The second aspect of Bitachon then can be said to flow from the mitzvah, you shall love the Lord your God. In summary then, Judaism recognizes both the hopeful and expectant trust based on faith and the steadfast and yearning trust based on love. Okay? So this is what Rav Lichtenstein here presents. I will just relate. He quotes from Tehillim what I said. On the one hand, all kinds of verses that are relating more to the first approach, okay, of the expectation for the good and the believing that God is doing things for the good. And let's say he brings a pasuk of of David HaMelech says that he's with God kegamul alei imo, like a very 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 young baby that is what?
Reading?
Yeah, being nursed by God or something like that. And he says, I think the source of bitachon for that baby is not only an expectation for the good, but the actual link to that source of bitachon, that is the thing. Okay? So that's like the two meanings of bitachon. I'll just add, when he relates the second concept of bitachon to the mitzvah of loving God, meaning loving unconditionally, loving even with Mesiras Nefesh, like Rabbi Akiva, like Rabbi Goldberg. I want to remind you, the Rambam, in his famous chapter in Hilchot Yesodei HaTorah, in Maimonides, in Mishneh Torah, for the mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem versus Chilul Hashem, sanctifying the name of God versus desecrating the name of God. So his first example is of Kiddush Hashem, is one that is giving up his life for God. 3, the Avodah Zarah, Gilui Arad, and Shfichut Damim, or a war. And the second example that he gives for Kiddush Hashem is doing mitzvot lishma, meaning doing mitzvot and refraining from doing averot, not for any interest and even against your egocentric interest, but doing it because that's the truth. Now, the common denominator between the two examples, I asked myself years ago, what is the common denominator? But the common denominator is clear. Mesiras Nefesh is the most extreme example that you are working not rationally, meaning rationally I mean in the social sciences, meaning against the egocentric survival instinct. Rather, you're giving up your life for values. And the second example is that within your life, you're not sacrificing now your physical life, but you're doing things against your egocentric interests, your desires, your lusts, your kavod, whatever, but you're doing it only because that's the right thing to do for the truth. So that's the common denominator. Both of these examples, Rambam defines worshiping Hashem Lishma as the midah of Avraham Avinu, of worshiping God out of love. Now, Rabbeinu Bechai and Rav Lichtenstein are connecting this to Bitachon. Yeah, they're saying that's the second meaning of Bitachon. Even if he takes your life, you have trust in the truth, and it's not only that you have trust in the truth, this is the source of your Bitachon. You're now strong, you are feeling secure because I'm on the right side of the world. I connected to the source of the world, okay? To really what counts in the world, which is God. And that's the source of my bitachon.
God,
that's lishma. That's lishma.
I can't get away from acknowledging what happened in World War II against the Jews, that afterwards.
You're asking where was God? So the answer is
We're talking about
the answer is we don't
worst thing
know.
that could happen.
Okay,
but
look.
He created us now, and we won these wars, and you can't just say, God, you know.
I don't know. Well, maybe I misunderstand
I mean,
you, but maybe I misunderstand
I know
you.
you're doing a good job here, but it's something that I think needs to be.
What should be?
You know, it seems to me that after World War II, okay, Hashem, since then he's been mamash on our side, okay? We won. I was 16 years old in 16.
Okay, so
I
therefore,
was crying when I thought we were going to be destroyed. Since then, we've gone in the other direction, okay?
and then the Yom Kippur War for people. That's the way people here in Israel experienced it. Said, hey, I'm a little confused.
Okay.
He's in our side, and now I see that he's not. Or after October 7th, hey, he's in our. What is he in our,
Okay,
is he in
so
our
it's
side?
not
So what's the question?
The question is why Hashem? I don't want to go to
No.
extreme or something.
Why?
I mean, I'm very
No,
talking
sure.
every day to Hashem. Okay?
So what's the question?
I'm just trying to say to us to talk about a belief in God. Luckily, we now live in the era of that we can really see Hashem's love and being with us, and just looking in Jerusalem and all. And, you know, every day, just look up the sky for a minute.
Okay.
Or so. But it's still not. You can't explain why that happened to us. Unless
Of course.
unless
Excuse
he
me.
punished us
Okay,
for things that
so
we did
just
wrong.
all right. Thank you. We'll speak. We'll finish this, and then I'll give time for questions. But I'm just saying, yeah, it's a very, very good point that you're raising up. No, sure. And I just want to say, all of what Rav Lichtenstein says here has nothing to do with the point that we don't understand the ways of God. Many times, where was God in the Holocaust? I was brought up by both of my Roshei Yeshiva. Rav Amital was a Holocaust survivor himself, and Rav Lichtenstein, that we have some questions, serious questions, unanswered. I humbly don't see the direct relationship between this very, very valid point and what we're talking about here. Furthermore, the Bitachon, the second concept of Bitachon talks exactly about that sometimes there are clouds that you don't understand, and you're still clinging to God. I want to finish. Whatever the cause here, it's one paragraph before the last, before the end of the page. Whatever the cause, the phenomenon is clear. Now, okay, I just want to explain because I'm skipping here things. Rav Lichtenstein's claim is, when he speaks with these religious Zionist educators, that perhaps because of the big success of the Six-Day War and that God is in our side and that we went, as educators, he tells them, too much with the first understanding of Bitachon and didn't equip our students enough with the second concept of Bitachon. Naturally, because we're not in exile anymore. Okay, we're not people that lived in these dark times, but rather we are now in our sovereign state, and God is showering us with all the good. So then, when there are clouds like Yom Kippur, October 7th, then he felt our students, our religious Zionist students, are less equipped to cope with this. So whatever the cause, the phenomenon is clear. The equilibrium between the two aspects of trust has been lost by the religious Zionist community in Israel. Again, I remind you, he writes that in 74. Okay, so that's 50 years ago. For your judgment to think whether it's still valid. This fact was and is reflected in our educational system. We inculcated the ideas of faith. What is that? Inculcated. What is that word?
That's very good.
What?
We accept it.
We accepted? Okay, great. So we accepted the ideas of faithful trust, redemption, hope, and expectation very well, but neglected to teach the values of loving, trust, of cleaving to God without hesitation under all circumstances. We did not fortify our children or ourselves concerning the possibility of crisis, conveying that the song to God must be sung even on the rivers of Babylon. We did not allow ourselves to wrestle with the possibility of national setbacks. I hope that my words are not misconstrued misconstrued to mean that we must abandon faithful trust, the first concept. Chas v'shalom, he says, personally, I am brimming with the belief that God will not abandon his people and that our national existence in this holy land is secure. Yeah, again, he's speaking right after the Yom Kippur War. I do my utmost to pass on this belief to my children and students. At the same time, I feel that I must simultaneously instill in them loving trust, not as a spiritual insurance policy in case of crisis, as could have been maybe misunderstood before, but rather because sacrifice and connectedness to God are essential in their own right, even under the most favorable circumstances. Meaning, he says it's not only I equip them with a tool when there are clouds. We should remember the second notion of Bitachon, even when the sun rises. Yeah, the ability to trust during suffering is important for a person, even when he thinks that difficulties do not lie on the horizon. I also hope that my words are not taken to imply a devaluation, chas v'shalom, of suffering or a negation of the pain of tribulation. Okay, he writes much more, and I here gave some exemplars of the things, but in sum, if we speak about Bitachon in times of war and Bitachon in our, we again, I think, both of these concepts, the belief that God is doing, the trust in God that, he's our God, he's in our side, he's going to do things for the good, on the one hand, and on the other hand, I'm just saying what you're going to miss is a story from the Yom Kippur War of two rabbis that I think makes the examples of this, but it's okay. No, bevadai. As a litraot. But we're almost done anyhow, so don't worry. So at any rate, so the two concepts of Bitachon here is, in sum, as on the one hand, trusting that God, okay, we are now in a war, there are all kinds of clouds, Iran, okay, we have now 2 months, a little more than 2 months of the previous administration that we don't know how will they act now when they're in this window. We don't know exactly how Trump will. We don't know anything. That is all true. So uncertain we don't know anything. I have my own opinions, believe me, but I'm not sharing them here. At any rate, I'm just saying that one belief is God is doing things for the good, and we trust that He will keep His promises, etc. That's on the one hand. And on the other hand, bitachon in God means bitachon in Him. In Him, regardless of what He does. Yeah? As the source of truth, bitachon in Him, clinging to Him. And Rav Lichtin says this is a very, very important thing that should be remembered. It's true that it served many Jews, perhaps the second notion in history when there was exile and they were persecuted, etc. But that doesn't mean that once we came back to our land with God showering all of His grace on us, we should abandon the second concept of bitachon. It is very, very essential. I want to give you here, with your permission, a dialogue that is found in Rav Chaim Sabato's book. As you know, Rav Chaim Sabato wrote a book about the Yom Kippur War called Adjusting Sights, in Hebrew, Te'um Kavanot. So, he wrote that book 30 years after the Yom Kippur War, meaning 20 years ago. He published it. Later, he published another book, more recently. Again, it's not like 2 years ago, but I mean, let's say 10 years ago. I don't know. It's called Beshafrir Chevyon. I don't know how to translate it, and it doesn't matter that much. But at the end of the book, he writes, again in his very nice way of writing that I will now destroy because I can't quote him exactly, about a meeting that was done, a gathering that was done in the house of his friend that was killed in the Yom Kippur War, who was the main focus, one of the main focuses of the book Adjusting Sights. For those who read it, who didn't read it, I'll just say, Rav Sabato describes his pain for the loss of his childhood friend, Dov Indig, Hashem Yikom Demo, in the Yom Kippur War. And there in this book, later book, B'Shafrir Chavyon, he describes a gathering that was at the house of Dov Indig's parents, where he was there and other people that participated in the war from the yeshiva was there, and Rav Shagar, Zecher Tzadik Lebracha, the Rosh Yeshiva of Siach, Rav Shagar was there too. Now Rav Shagar fought in the Yom Kippur War himself. Rav Shagar was from Hakotel Yeshiva, like Rav Chaim Sabato, and Rav Shagar's tank was hit in the war, and Rav Shagar was burned there. He was abandoned for 15 hours, suffering, but he survived. And then Rav Yaakov Meidan, the Rosh Yeshiva of the Gush, they were both then not Rosh Yeshiva. They became Rosh Yeshiva later. But here we have a story of two Jewish soldiers, two future Rosh Yeshiva, one saving the other. During the war, Rav Meidan found him and rescued him. Unfortunately, his two very, very good friends, Talmidei Chachamim, were killed in the tank. Only he survived. So he experienced the Yom Kippur War very sharp, Rav Shagar. So everyone had his religious experience of the Yom Kippur War. Here we have Yeshiva Bachors fighting in the Yom Kippur War. Chaim Sabato, who wrote a whole book of his religious experience of the Yom Kippur War. And how, in this report that Rav Chaim Sabato gives, we have an opportunity to hear Rav Shagar also. So Rav Chaim Sabato tells there, I saw there in the Yom Kippur War the hand of Hashem to me personally. When my tank was hit and we jumped from the tank and were rescued, I didn't dare to write it in the book Adjusting Sights. Now I only have the courage to tell that we were screaming the verse, Ashir ala Hashem ki gamad alai. I will sing to God that He saved us. And Rav Shagar listens quietly, and he says, thank you. All of what you said is true. It is true because that's what you experienced authentically. And I know you and I trust you. My experience in the war was different. The sukkah, Yom Kippur War was the sukkah did not protect us. My two friends were killed. God was hiding in my eyes. Totally. It was dark. And from the darkness, that's a very Hasidish, here I give a Hasidish twist of Rav Shagar, relating to the second concept of Bitachon of Rav Lichtenstein, as you'll show. I link it to that. Dafka, because I see nothing. Furthermore, I have my belief is Dafka growing from the questions. I understand that I'm limited, that I don't understand. And Dafka, because of that, the only thing is God. So my love to God was totally, I'm saying it in my words, unconditional. Because lehefech, I didn't get anything from Him. I mean, I'm saying it extremely, but my two friends were killed. I was burned. He was hiding. The sukkah didn't protect us. So I just want to present you, I take these two religious experiences that are both true, of Rav Chaim Sabato, a Rosh Yeshiva, fighting in the Yom Kippur War, a future Rosh, and Rav Shagar, a future Rosh Yeshiva, fighting in the Yom Kippur War, and they walk out of the war, one with the first concept of Bitachon, God was with me, I trusted God, I sang to God for the grace He gave me, and one walking out with, everything is dark, I have tremendous questions of God, unanswered. Why did He take my two tzaddikim friends? It's unanswered. And dafka, because of that, the only one that I'm clinging to is Him. That's the, yeah. Bakasha.
Answer the gentleman's question. Many years ago, I was privileged to be in a shiur on Tishba of Rabbi Jacob Youngwright. And that's the Youngwright's brother, who also survived the Holocaust. And during his presentation, during which he was very, very calm, somebody said, well, we know why the Holocaust occurred. And in the blink of an eye, his demeanor changed 180 degrees. And he said very pointedly, and I remember this almost as if it was yesterday, he says, don't let anyone ever tell you that we know why it occurred. Nobody knows. This is a survivor of the Holocaust. Make a little piece to your mind, nobody knows. We'll find out at the end of time, we don't even know that.